This is Eitan Weinstein.
And I'm Naor Menninger, and you're listening to Two Nice Jewish Boys.
In the quiet early hours of a crisp October morning in 1973, as soldiers on the front lines of Israel borders stood guard, a storm was brewing. Unknown to them, but clear as day to a select few in the distant corridors of the U.S. National Security Agency. Among these few was Bruce Brill, a young Arabic interpreter whose job was to listen in, analyze, and understand. That morning, the earth-shattering realization that his own team knew of the impending Arab attack, while those who needed that information the most remained in the dark, changed his life forever. Today, Bruce joins us with his book, Deceit of an Ally, a compelling account of military anti-Semitism, secret intelligence operations, and the Yom Kippur War treachery that nearly cost Israel dearly. His book reveals shocking insights into how misleading intelligence assessments led to a dire miscalculation, the repercussions of which are still felt today. A former NSA analyst turned Mid-East Security Analyst, Bruce has shared his unique perspectives through numerous platforms and publications, enriching our understanding of Middle Eastern dynamics and security. Bruce's journey from an NSA analyst to a passionate Zionist, an advocate for truth and intelligence, is not just the story of a man, but a reflection on the complexities of war and diplomacy. And of course, we can't help but think of another crisp October morning, almost exactly 50 years after the 1973 morning, when Israel faced a devastating intelligence failure as Hamas launched an unprecedented attack from Gaza. So this will definitely prove relevant. Bruce offers not just history, but lessons on the importance of clarity and honesty and intelligence in international relations. We are thrilled to be joined by Bruce Brill on the podcast, on the Two Nice Jewish Boys podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
And I'm also thrilled to be here.
We're honored. Thank you so much, making it all the way from the West Bank, or otherwise, known as Judea and Samaria.
Yeah. Right, the land of the Jews.
The land of the Jews. It's a controversial issue nowadays. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. So where do we start? This is in 1970. When did you join the NSA?
Well, I was joined to the NSA. I joined Uncle Sam's Army. I enlisted in 1971 in April for 4 years, a 4-year enlistment. And before you go in, you take a battery of exams to find out what you're good at, so Uncle Sam knows where to position you. And I aced the ALAT, the Army Language Aptitude Test, so they gave me language of my choice. What would you like? This was during the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was really hot and heavy at that time in 1971. So they said, what language would you like? You aced the ALAT. Would you like Chinese, Cambodian, Laotian, Vietnamese, or Arabic? So obviously I chose the one furthest from Southeast Asia. There were other choices as well.
Okay. You could actually choose any language basically that you wanted, or any language that was
relevant. Should be relevant.
I wanted to take Hebrew, but they didn't offer it at the moment that I enlisted.
Mostly languages of American adversaries.
No. We spied on Israel as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was no problem. As a matter of fact, toward the end of my service at NSA, I was working in the Hebrew department, spying on Israel.
Okay.
That's before the Pollard affair.
Well before, a dozen years before Pollard. Mm-hmm. We're talking 73.
Are you going to get us in trouble? I don't care, but he's an American citizen still.
So Me too.
I could be complicit. Wait, so you joined in 1971 and you aced the ALAT, chose Arabic.
Right.
Meaning you didn't know a word of Arabic before that.
Not a word.
Wow. And so how long did it take you to learn?
Well, who said I learned? But how long
Well, I'm
did they
assuming.
how long did they teach me?
Yeah.
It was 47-week course in what's called Dillywick. You heard me say ALAT for Army Language Aptitude Test. There's a lot of acronyms in the Army, and Dillywick is one of them. Defense Language Institute West Coast, and it was a 47-week course at that time. But since 9/11, they saw that there was an intelligence failure, and so they upped the language training for Arabic interpreters to, I believe it's 52 weeks now.
Oh, okay. So in 5 extra weeks, now they're good. Now they can catch.
It can't hurt. It can't hurt.
Okay. They just in those 5 weeks they learn plane and bomb.
Maybe.
And then the 47 weeks before they don't. But okay, so did you learn Arabic? Did you manage to?
I was okay. I was qualified. You take tests to see if you qualify, and yes, and so that's why I was stationed at NSA in Fort Meade, Maryland.
Why not CIA, by the way?
CIA at that time, and I think even today, is much smaller than NSA. I don't know how many multiple times NSA is larger than CIA. But back then, in the early 1970s, almost nobody heard of NSA, even though it was multiple times larger than the CIA.
I think even today it's a bit more glorified, the CIA. More movies, more, right?
Well,
Gets more rep.
Post Edward Snowden,
Yeah.
people know what NSA is.
Right.
But pre-Edward Snowden, they kept a very low profile. We used to joke that NSA meant no such agency. And we kept a very low profile. NSA did.
Mm-hmm.
I see. So you got up to speed, and then after the course, you were posted where exactly?
Okay, so after the course, I forget how many weeks, but we were sent to San Angelo, Texas, to Goodfellow Air Force Base for security training. And then we were assigned to different places. Some of us were sent overseas, and some of us were sent to Fort Meade.
I see. And in Fort Meade, that's where the base of operations is in.
Right, that's
where
NSA,
your day-to-day is.
NSA headquarters.
I see. And so tell us a bit about your day-to-day, like prior to 70.
Yeah, no, but first of all, like you come there, or even during the courses, are there any other Jews at all?
Okay, that's a very good question, and I'm glad that you asked it. In the Hebrew department of NSA, there were 2 other Jews. But as far as all of G6, that's the section that deals with the Middle East, I'm trying to recall, and I think I might have been the only Jew in uniform.
Wow.
And that's because Jews, generally, American Jews don't go to the military in the first place, or are they sifted out from the services?
During World War II, the Jews served in a higher percentage to the general population.
Mm-hmm.
But during the Vietnam War era, it wasn't a popular war, particularly among some of the left-leaning Jews, and they seem to have a talent for not dodging the draft, but avoiding the draft.
Right.
And so there weren't that many Jews. Even in the Presidio of Monterey, Dillywick, I think I met one other Jew who said, "Don't call me a Jew, call me a Hebrew."
Really? Why? Why do you think that
I don't know. I never hid the fact that I was a Jew.
People deduced it from your surname? Is it
No,
very Jewish?
My last name, Brill, is not particularly Jewish.
Right.
There are a lot of Jewish Brills.
Yeah.
But I think to the general public, it's not known as
A Jewish name.
Levine or Shapiro or
Right.
Goldberg.
Yeah.
But I never hid it. Before I went into the service, I began trying to keep kosher, just from reading English translations of the Bible. I saw that this is very important, and I was convinced that God interfaced with this people out in the desert, exiting Egypt. And so I wanted to take it seriously, and I began keeping kosher. But when I went into the Army, it's almost impossible to keep kosher, particularly in basic training. And also after basic training, when we were sent out to Monterey, California, to the Presidio there, Dillywick, the mess hall, even vegetables were cooked with lard. It was the most unkosher place to eat in the universe, maybe. And so here I was in a dilemma. What do I do? So I was eating hard-boiled eggs and salad, and that's what I was living on. And then it was a mixed service base. There was Air Force, Army, Marines, and Navy. And I found out that the Zoomies, the Air Force guys, had very liberal headquarters. And they would say that they were Hindu, and they would apply for what was called separate rations. And they were almost automatically given it. So I thought, wow, you get separate rations so that you get an allowance on your monthly paycheck so you can go out and buy food if you can't eat in the mess hall. And I was thinking, wow, why not? So I went to my headquarters, the Army headquarters, and they told me to get lost. So I go back to Arabic class. We had a lieutenant colonel in that class, a cowboy from Washington State. And he had a mouth that could make a sailor blush. He asked me what happened, and I told him. He said, you go back and you officially apply. So I went back and I officially applied, and now it was in the works. So they sent me to the post chaplain. And I don't remember what flavor Christian he was, but he asked me, on what basis are you requesting separate rats? And I said, I'm Jewish. I'm trying to keep kosher, and it's very difficult in the mess hall. Everything is cooked with lard. And he says, what chapter in the Bible? He was testing me. And I happened to know that one, Leviticus 11. And I was so proud of myself. Now I'm a shoo-in. He's going to authorize my separate rats. But he didn't. He opened his Bible toward the back part, and he says, and Jesus says, it's more important what comes out of your mouth than what goes into your mouth. And he denied my petition for separate rats.
Wow.
So I go back to class, and the same colonel says, what happened? And I told him, and you could see the smoke coming out of his ears. He told the teacher, I have to leave the classroom. I have some business to attend to. Inside of like 20 minutes, there was a runner from headquarters that came into our class. Specialist Brill, you're requested to be down at headquarters immediately. They had all the paperwork approved and written up. So I got my separate rats.
Wow. If that pastor made it out alive.
And before we dive to your service, could you just explain, that's 1972, right?
Right.
What was the mandate of NSA in 1972?
To gather as much information that might be useful to U.S. security.
Right. And the main focus was the East.
Well, the communist countries, they were a biggie.
Uh-huh.
But every country, even allies, we spy. As I said, we spied on Israel. Not spied. Spied is like
gathered information.
Right, exactly. Spy sounds illegal and intriguing, but it was information that's out in the waves, radio communications that you can grab and process.
Only
and
SIGINT. What's only signal intelligence?
Yeah, that's what we did. NSA, that's what we did.
Right. And that goes to the president to his security briefing, essentially, the highlights.
The Security Council of the U.S. Security Council. Right. But it doesn't go right away to them. It gets processed.
Yeah, of course.
And then it gets summarized.
The important stuff.
Right. And then the summaries get sent further.
Okay.
So then you're in Fort Meade. What can you describe us before we get to 73? Well, maybe, you know what, before we do that, let's just plug the book real quick.
Yeah.
Just we'll flash it at the camera. Deceit of an Ally. The subtitle is A Memoir of Military Anti-Semitism, NSA Secret Jew Room, and Yom Kippur War Treachery. There's so much in that. We got to talk about every single one of those.
Yeah.
Bruce Brill, it's available on Amazon?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, guys, check it out. Search on Google and you'll find it and get yourself a copy. And there's also one in Hebrew if you happen to read in Hebrew.
The Hebrew.
Great. So before we get to 73, just describe to us like kind of what your day-to-day is. So you're sitting most day listening to signal intelligence, just trying to sift out?
Well, I was afraid you were going to ask that question. There are a lot of people that work at NSA. There are thousands, if not tens of thousands. And so there's maybe an excess of manpower. And so you get little jobs. And my job was to map out Israeli overflights of Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. That was my job. And
what does that mean exactly?
Well, I can't tell you exactly what it means. But
what is an overflight?
Military overflights.
Okay. So Israeli military overflights? So Israeli military flying over Lebanon, Syria?
Right. Because they have their anti-aircraft capabilities, so they have people monitoring and passing on coordinates over the ether waves. So this is what we intercept, and we can map out Israeli overflights based on Arabs talking over the radio.
I see.
And so I'm very good at numbers in Arabic.
Okay.
I'm also good at connecting dots, because that's it. You map out coordinates and they're dots on a piece of paper, and then you join them. So, you've heard the expression connect the dots. So I was very good dot connector.
Connecting the dots, literally.
Literally. But also, all that work generally took maybe a half an hour. And I'm there 9 hours. So I had to fill in the other 8.5 hours with something. And I read books on the Middle East because it was collateral information. And I began learning Hebrew because that was a collateral language. And that's enabled me actually to transfer to the Hebrew department in my last year at NSA.
I see. And your last year was after 73?
Yeah, after 73.
When was your last year in the NSA?
I got out. I said I enlisted for 4 years, but they gave us a year early out because of budgetary reasons.
So 74.
So I got out in April of 74.
I see.
Right.
All right, so let's talk about the Yom Kippur incident. So how did that come to be? Like, what information exactly reached you and your fellow NSA colleagues? So I have to go back to the Presidio of Monterey, because I bought myself a motorcycle, and that was my means of transportation. A buddy of mine who was living in Wyoming came to visit with his Jeep. And he challenged me to a hill climb.
So in this hill climb, I didn't make it up on my bike, and I wrenched my back. So I was getting treatment for my back, my upper back, all through my time at the Presidio of Monterey and also at NSA. I was getting treatment on the upper back, the neck. And one day, Thursday, October 4th, I went to get treatment. Actually, I went to get the treatment at a specific time at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I arranged with my supervisor that I would take off after my treatment. So that was the Yom Kippur weekend. So I could beat it out of the parking lot and get through the Baltimore Tunnel to get up to my home, and my parents' home in New York on Long Island. And so I thought that was pretty smart of me. And I got my treatment, and they put a hot salt pack on your back. They lay you flat face down. And generally I would fall asleep, and the nurse comes and wakes me up. Specialist Brill, you have a phone call at the desk. I go to take the phone call. It's my supervisor. He says, "You're planning on going home." I said, "Yeah, I cleared it with you." He says, "Don't even think about going home. We have a war on our hands for real this time because there were false alarms back in May and earlier in the year, January, February, when there were Arab military maneuvers that looked threatening. But this time in October," he said, can I say a dirty word on your
Sure.
podcast? He said, "The shit hits the fan on Saturday." So not only did we know, but we knew that it was going to happen on Saturday. Saturday was Yom Kippur that year. And I said, "You must be kidding, because we had these false alarms before." And he says, "No, this time it's AVAL." AVAL was colloquial for meaning proof positive. There's no doubt.
The
And
president then is Nixon?
the president was Nixon.
Mm-hmm.
And what transpired was, because I was able to gist Hebrew by that time, and I could still gist Arabic, it wasn't too rusty yet, and I could gist both languages, I was given the job of monitoring radio communication from the battlefront and to record anything of military content. That was my job at the beginning of the Yom Kippur War. And again, if you look at my book, you'll see at the very beginning, it says that it was approved for publication by the Pentagon. The Pentagon has a pre-publication office, and I sent my manuscript to them, and they were very responsible, very professional, very nice, because I felt like I was walking into a lion's den when I sent my manuscript to them. What are they going to say? You can't publish this book at all. But after a 4-month review, they gave me permission to publish the book under 2 conditions. One, that I redact what they require be redacted, and 2, that I don't add 1 word of additional content.
Oh.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense. And so that's why I can't tell you exactly what happened, because that section is redacted, and I haven't gotten clarification if what they required redacted in the published work, if I could speak about it. Is that okay? So I sent them an inquiry, and I haven't gotten an answer back. So,
But what you can say is that we're talking about, it's a Thursday or a Friday? What day was it?
it was Thursday.
It was a Thursday. So by
2 days before
Thursday,
the
We knew. And people,
American knew.
and people above me knew before I did, obviously.
Could you, well, we'll ask you just a yes/no question, and if you can't answer, say I can't answer it, but do you know if the information was passed upwards to the highest?
I'll get to that.
Okay.
In fact, that's why I wrote the book. That's why I wrote the book, because now it's 5.5 years ago. I was invited to the home of Eli Ze'ira.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who that is?
Of course.
Yes, okay, but your listeners might not know.
Yeah.
He was the head of Israeli military intelligence at the time. He invited me to his home, and he confided in me that he received intelligence assessment from the Americans that the Arabs have no intention of attacking on or before.
When did he get it?
Like days before.
Okay.
Or maybe even earlier than that. Maybe the day before or days before.
Okay.
He didn't tell me, but he did tell me that he got American assessments just prior to the outbreak of the war that the Arabs were not going to attack. As a matter of fact, at 2:00, there was a meeting of the command in Tel Aviv, and he was still saying that the probability of war was very low.
That's on Friday.
This is on Saturday morning.
2 a.m.
Well, Saturday afternoon. Saturday afternoon. He was still saying the probability of war...
But the war broke on Saturday morning, no?
Saturday at 2:00.
At
Israel time.
Okay.
Israel time.
Okay.
So...
So minutes before that, he was still convinced it's
he
not
was
gonna
still
happen.
convinced.
Mhm.
Why was he convinced? He confided in me that he received these intelligence assessments from the Americans that the Arabs have no intention of attacking.
Okay. So what do you make of that?
Okay. We knew. Not only did Bruce Brill know, and his supervisor who informed him knew, but I interviewed 4 other NSA workers at that time. 3 of them were Arabic linguists who I knew, and one of them was someone that I met, I'll tell you his story, who was working out in the field. And all of them knew before I did. All of them knew. Mm-hmm. They corroborate what I'm telling you.
So what do you make of that?
Okay. So the question is, everyone knew. Everyone in G6, the section that dealt with the Middle East, knew. So how could it be that Eli Ze'ira's contacts in American intelligence told him that they were sure that the Arabs weren't going to attack? So I asked Eli Ze'ira, they duped you? And he said, no. These people that he was in touch with were friends of Israel and were trustworthy. So they were duped. Now, how could that be? Okay. Now there's another piece of the puzzle. You're sitting down. The other piece of the puzzle was disclosed to me. I got a hint of it when the supervisor of the Hebrew section at a social event got drunk and confided in me that there are rooms in NSA that you can't get into because you're a Jew. And I never made very much of that.
That was when this...
While I was working at NSA.
Is he a Jew?
He wasn't a Jew.
Oh, okay.
He was not a Jew, but a good person. And I think, you know, the expression, as the liquor goes in, the truth comes out. And I think his conscience was also troubled by this. Mm-hmm. Because what could be more un-American than to have secret rooms within an intelligence agency that are unmonitorable, that are receiving taxpayer money, that don't allow a certain American with the highest of security clearances entry or even knowledge that they exist. What could be more un-American than
based
that?
on his or her religion.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what clarified this for me was reading a book called The Secret War Against the Jews by John Loftus. I highly recommend that book. I think it was published in '96. And I'm still in touch with John Loftus. In that book, he talks about something called the Jew Room. And he says in his book it's an absolute anomaly because it's not one room, so that's wrong to call it the Jew Room. He says it's a complex of rooms, and Jews are not allowed entry or even knowledge of them. So he says...
it's the no Jew not room.
Something like that, that it's the wrong term.
So what's the purpose of the room?
To work against Israel. And he documents this in his book.
Mm-hmm.
And not only to work against Israel, but to work against American Jews. And I suggest that you interview John Loftus.
So that's remaining from the McCarthy era or something? I know McCarthy wasn't responsible on NSA, or was he? I don't know the history of the NSA. But that's like from the days you monitored communists and stuff like that, or we don't really know.
What does that have to do with someone's religion?
Back in the day, many Jews were in Hollywood, etc. Were sought after because
their ties to communism.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's speculation. I have no idea.
I don't know.
So okay,
you take people like what's his name, Mark Levin, or Dennis Prager, or Ben Shapiro.
Mm-hmm.
They're the furthest thing from the left of the spectrum, and they're Jewish.
Yeah, that's today. Okay. So what did you do with that information?
So that gives explanation to how Eliezer's contacts, American generals sitting on the Security Council, would have themselves been duped.
But this is all in the realm, like, up until now you've been giving us firsthand accounts that have been corroborated by colleagues of yours in the NSA and other contacts, and some of them even by the highest levels of intelligence here in Israel, like, the side of Eliezer saying we were told that there is not going to be an attack. But when we get to the Jew Room, like, how much evidence is there of this room in John Lofton, you said?
Loftus.
John Loftus's book and his accounts, like how much evidence is there of the existence of this non-room that doesn't allow Jews in?
It definitely did exist when I was working there. There were rooms that were off limits to me, that I know from the supervisor of the Hebrew department.
And you so he told you when he was drunk, you can't get into, there are certain rooms you can't get into because you're a Jew.
Right.
And you managed to confirm it?
Yeah, how did you manage to confirm that?
Well, I didn't confirm it.
Okay.
I'm just telling you.
That's the account that you got from him.
But John Loftus's account confirms this.
Yeah.
So you can ask John Loftus for confirmation. He interviewed at least 2 people that were members of the Jew Room for his book. So he would be a very good source.
Okay.
And I asked John if he could find out if the Jew Room still exists today, because I wrote a letter to the head of security, the security chief of NSA in 1993 and again in 1994, saying that I knew that there were rooms that were off limits to me because I was a Jew. Does this policy still, is it still enforced today? And I got no answer, which is an answer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how could he answer?
But how do you see the conspiracy? Like where did the information stop? Did it stop in a mid-tier level in the NSA, or did it? How high does it go?
Okay, so the first-hand intelligence information that was collected and processed by two of the four collaborators that I reference in my book, they were processing raw material. And what happens with the raw material is it gets sent to headquarters, and then it's processed, and then it's, when I say processed, I mean it's filtered so that it could be summarized and then passed on. And what happens to these summaries is it goes up to the higher levels. That's what you're asking. Does it get to the President of the United States? I don't know. But it does get to the generals that Eli Zaira was in touch with. And it was already corrupted before it got to them, if what Eli Zaira says is true.
So it had to go through the Jew room, right? Like
somehow, I don't know.
Somehow, and then
I don't know.
Like someone in the NSA supposedly
processed the raw intelligence.
Yeah. And censored.
Right. Uh-huh. And what we knew, me and four other people.
And that's a crime in America?
What specifically?
If indeed, let's say, the head of the NSA at the time or some high-tier ranking individual in the NSA got this information and deliberately sabotaged it on its way up, is this treason according to the American law, or?
I'm not. You know what? Ask John Loftus that question as well, because he is a lawyer,
right?
And he worked in the advocacy department when he was an officer in the American Army. So he would be a good person to ask that question of.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and then how did you feel once you saw, like, how did you react in real time when you saw how devastating the attack was?
Okay.
Right? And so you knew you could, you must have felt horrible.
Here I am monitoring what's going on, and I understood that the Israeli soldier on the front line was caught by surprise. How could he be? I was surprised that they were surprised. Because how could it be? Little specialist fourth class Brill knew 2 days before. How come the Israeli soldier on the front line didn't know? Israel is our ally. Didn't we pass the information on to them? And so I looked down at my uniform and I said, oh my God, maybe I'm wearing the wrong uniform. And I swore to myself at that moment that I would come to Israel. Mm-hmm. Once I got out of the Army and I got an honorable discharge, and very shortly after, I came to Israel. What do they say? And the rest is history. But I did want to say one thing in Eli Zaira's favor, that he relied on American intelligence rather than his own, because there were all kinds of indications that an attack was imminent, that Shmona had in their hands. And I interviewed people in my book also that knew, and they passed this intelligence that the Syrians are going to attack tomorrow to headquarters. And Eliezer ignored his own intelligence people and relied on American intelligence. And to Eliezer's credit, if the American assessment was true, and it wasn't, if it were true, then he had every right to ignore his own intelligence in lieu of the American assessments. And I'll give you an example. My last name is Brill, and I write it, you can see in the Hebrew,
I
as
was wondering
Rosh
about that.
Tevot. So back in the old days, when there were telephone books, it was written with the Rosh Tevot. And I get a call from a man named Shabtai Brill, and he says, why do you write Brill with Rosh Tevot? And we had a nice discussion about the origin of the name, and he was amazed to know that his name was an acronym. And then a very friendly guy, and we were talking about other things, and he said that he worked in intelligence, Israeli intelligence. He was a pioneer in drone overflights. Back in the late 1960s, it's hard to imagine. What did he do? He bought American toy planes that were remotely controllable. He affixed cameras to them, sent them over the Suez Canal, and took some photographs of military installations on the Egyptian side with American toy planes.
Wow.
Compare that to what I observed. On one occasion, I was observing some satellite photographs of an Israeli army base in the Sinai. You're sitting down. I could read the name of the soldier off of his kippah. And the satellites could survey the entire Sinai Peninsula. Not just, a few hundred yards on the other side of the Suez Canal. So Eliezer was correct in relying on American intelligence services.
I mean, obviously, in retrospect, he wasn't correct, but...
Right.
He was correct to assume that the quality, if he were to trust that the information that he was getting is accurate, that the quality of intelligence coming from America was higher than the quality of intelligence
Right.
But I think, it brings us to what happened here many months ago.
Not that many.
Seven already. Right?
Seven months ago in late 2003. It's October 7th, where Israel experienced this devastating intelligence failure, and a lot of the aftermath also, it seems to me to have deriven from some over-reliance on our allies, meaning the fact that we could be deceited by an ally seems to be, and the fact that a lot of people have been talking recently about the intelligence failure on October 7th being somewhat attributable to the fact that we relied too much on technology and not on quality intelligence, too much on fences with motion sensors and so on, and cameras and SIGINT, and not enough on getting down and dirty in the hard work. I wonder if this over-reliance and saying, okay, they're better, they have better intelligence, instead of just, getting the work done and doing the work properly and making sure that what you do is good. I mean, don't we look to our military, and our even political leaders to ensure that we are safe and that we have the best intelligence possible and not rely on?
Look, to Eliezer's discredit, he should have taken the worst assessment and built on that, not the flowery best assessment. That was his job, to be prepared for the worst, not to go to sleep assuming the best.
Or go to Eilat. I'm referring to the current, the last head of intelligence, who on October 7th, he was sleeping in Eilat.
Right. So of course, when my book came out, I arranged to give some book launchings in America. And after October 7th, everyone that was in the audience, the first question they would ask is, what happened on October 6th? Could that have been the reason for the intelligence failure on October 7th? And of course, that's my first suspicion. I mean, I wrote a book about it. It's my life.
Right.
And of course, that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah, we're not talking about that much, but how come the Americans didn't know about October 7th?
I don't believe that NSA didn't know.
You don't believe they didn't
it.
know?
I don't. Look, they informed Israel that Iran was going to send these missiles and drones before they were launched. NSA informed the Russians that there was going to be a terrorist attack in Moscow. NSA knew about the October 6th attack. We knew. They didn't know about Hamas's plan? I doubt it. So the question is, if they knew, these are three big ifs. If they knew, and I assume they did, and if they didn't send the intelligence assessment to Israel, or like they did 50 years ago, sent a false assessment to Israel. Another if I had been able to get my book out in good time and promote it in good time and get it into the hands of Israeli intelligence analysts so that they would have been aware of this possibility, could October 7th have been prevented?
It's a lot of ifs.
Yeah,
I know these are,
ifs,
I said
but
these
I think
are
the
big
biggest,
ifs.
The biggest if to me, which
if
all
we
of a
relied
sudden
on ourselves.
which really strikes, which I hadn't considered before, is if the Americans knew, and all of a sudden seems very plausible to me. Meaning,
Especially seeing what's going down now, right? How America treats us in the past few months.
Okay, I
with,
want to say something about America, the definition of America, that America knew or America didn't know, or America deceived Israel, or America is a huge enterprise, and there are Americans that hate Jews and hate Israel, but there are Americans that love Jews and love Israel. The subtitle of my book was given by one of the guys in my Arabic class in the Army, who after the Army, he became a lawyer and a book publisher. And so he designed this cover, cover of...
Read the subtitle again so that people
Okay, so the first part of the subtitle is A Memoir of Military Anti-Semitism. So I said to him, Kevin, it sounds like a crybaby. I don't like it. Why don't you say a memoir of military anti and pro-Semitism, just like the lieutenant colonel in my Arabic class that came to my rescue. And there were other Army officers that came to my rescue when I was being dumped on because I was a Jew. Side stories. So I said, why not say a memoir of military anti and pro-Semitism? And Kevin says, Bruce, pro-Semitism doesn't sell books.
Okay.
also, but to be fair, pro-Semitism isn't the story, right? Because no one cares if there's a bunch of Jew-loving officers. That's great. Right? The story is that there are these deceitful anti-Israel, anti-Jew forces within the American military, which I think really is.
So that's why you can't say America deceived Israel. And the title, Deceit of an Ally, is a little bit problematic from that point of view, because I love America. And I was denied venues here in Israel because how can we invite someone to promote a book that's anti-American? So it's not it's anything but anti-American. It's anti-American because the Jew Room crowd that are taxpayer funded, that work against American stated public policy, that's un-American. So I'm anti-American.
Yeah, but it only takes one rotten apple, right, to spoil the bunch, and that's the buck stops somewhere. Meaning, America, just as many are claiming here that Bibi or the heads of the military must take responsibility for what happened under their watch. America needs to take responsibility for what happens under its authority.
Right.
And so they have the responsibility to root out this evil from within them. And if they don't, and they cover it up and they don't respond to emails about inquiries into the Jew Room, then America is complicit.
By the way, the 1993 and 94 letters that I wrote to the security chief of NSA, they were actually hard copy letters. Was there even internet back then? I think
Barely.
I hope you didn't mail them through the Israel Post, because that might be the reason you never
mailed
got
them.
an answer.
I mailed the first one registered, and the second one I sent through DHL secure courier service, because it was things that I was talking about that could be classified. So I had to take precautions. I couldn't just send it through regular mail. Mm-hmm. Also, I wanted to know that it was really received, return receipt and so forth.
Okay, that was actually fascinating. Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. The book is called Deceit of an Ally. Guys, check it out. Amazon, Kindle. There's an ebook version or only hard copy?
Yeah, okay. No, there's a Kindle version.
We'll put links.
And my friend, my army buddy, Kevin, worked very hard, gratis, to turn it into a Kindle version.
Ah, okay.
And why? Because when we first submitted it as an ebook, the parts that were blacked out, and there are whole sections.
You put blacked out parts. You kept them in. Uh-huh.
It was actually, if you downloaded it, you could read under the blackout.
Okay.
So he worked very hard, Kevin, to make it kosher.
Okay. Mm. Okay. Unlike the salads and the
the lard.
Look. Wow. Okay. Nice. Yep.
That's pretty cool.
Okay,
That's
guys.
the biggest section.
Thank you so much for coming, Bruce. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you for having me.
Really fascinating topic.
Guys, check out the book. Get a copy. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.